Hey guys, Keith Hernandez here, back with another how-to series. This is the one that I think a lot of people have been asking for, and that is how do you make your 3D matrix molds? And carrying off of the last sculpture that we did in the how-to series, I'm going to walk you through on designing a mold for that particular sculpture, going over really the technique in terms of building the right thickness for your mold, breaking up your mold into the parts that you need to print, as well as adding the flanges, bolts, and the keys that these help kind of line up each of these shells so that they're not shifting around and moving on you before you add the bolts. The techniques and methods here are not terribly complex, but if you're fresh and you're starting off for the first time, there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of parts that are happening and being created and combined, and it does appear to be more complex than it really is. The more molds you make, the more comfortable you'll get, and the simpler the process will break down for you. And then eventually you'll be able to utilize these same techniques to make virtually any kind of mold that you want, like this cord muscle forearm mold that's even labeled so that I could basically foam cast muscles right out of these printed molds with virtually no work cleanup needed. Everything here is printed Elgu Neptune 4 Maxes. Because of the large size, I'm able to create larger half pieces, but because it's all digital, you'll be able to break it up and scale it to your printers. Maybe you have more pieces because your printer's small, or maybe you have bigger pieces if you have a bigger printer than what I'm printing on. There are virtually endless possibilities and combinations. So without further ado, let's get to it and learn how to make a 3D matrix mold. To start off, let's just talk the basics. Making a matrix mold is a fundamental process for encapsulating a physical sculpture. We're going to be designing a mold digitally, but my experience with mold making started back in early 2000s doing traditional matrix molds. That's building it up with clay around a physical sculpture, fiberglassing over that, opening it all up, cleaning all the clay out, pouring in the silicone. So there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of room for error if you aren't fully invested in understanding how a matrix mold works. I have more than one way to do a 3D matrix mold. I'm just going to cover one in this video, but if you're interested in the second way, we can definitely possibly revisit that for another time. But this one revolves around basic knowledge that came from the sculpture video. We're going to utilize our sculpture, we're going to utilize our master file, and we are going to build off of that. So let's dive right into it and learn along the way. Here's where we ended up at. We have our 3D print ready sculpture, and we included on that all of these holes. The bigger holes were the mold keys that we'll be utilizing for the shell to lock onto this sculpture, and then the smaller holes are the bolt holes that the bolts will go through. But to design our mold, we're not going to work off of this file. We're going to go back to our final sculpture file, and that's the one that still had the subdivisions and the poly grouping. This is going to be important for building our mold. But I don't want to work off of this master file. There's a lot of subtools going on in here, a lot of different things. So I'm going to work clean, and I'm going to work off of this tool on its own new subtool. So we're going to copy this, come over to this sphere, paste it down, and delete the sphere. And we're going to come back and grab a couple of other important things. We're going to grab the keys that we used to create our holes for the keys, paste that there. We're going to come back and we're going to grab the bolts that we used. We're going to come back and we're going to paste that here. So now we have Now we have the bolts where the bolts are supposed to be. And then the last thing I want to grab is that handy dandy calibration cube. We want to make sure that everything stays scaled correctly. So we've got our 25mm calibration cube. If we're not sure, we can always check the calibration cube. I'm going to show you how to check it using ZBrush's own scaling tool. So over in the Z plugin, we have Scale Master, and you can basically click Set Scene, and it'll grab this subtool because that's the subtool we're on, and it'll tell us that it's right now 25mm. We can change it into centimeters, change it into inches. This means we are scaled correctly, and that's important because we're going to be doing a lot of thicknesses for this silicone matrix mold. We're going to go back to this, and we are actually going to duplicate this one. That way we're working off of a copy. We'll need to come back to the final sculpt later for some checks to make sure that our silicone's not colliding. We're going to make sure that the base of this mold fits the base of the sculpture, so work off of duplicate. I'm going to rename it, and we're just going to start with the name of silicone, because what we're going to do first is we're going to dictate the thickness of the silicone that will be around the sculpture. So I'm going to turn on my poly grouping, and I'm going to lower my subdivision all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and hide the base sculpture and then work off of solo for now. Now we're at our lowest subdivision. I'm going to delete all the higher ones. I don't need them for this to be working off of. We just work off of this. And the first thing, actually, I'm going to turn that final base sculpture back on. We'll just work off of solo. Change my mind again. I'm going to leave that off because I want to see just the bolts and the keys. And this line right here is part of the original sculpture. I don't want to get rid of it, but it is really close to the keys of my mold. And I'm going to make sure to add another one. And what I'm doing here is, this is right now, all this purple stuff, that's going to be silicone. And we want the silicone to go past the actual sculpture. So this band that I added is going to be the next, it's going to be the next level of silicone that we want to be represented. We're going to polygroup loop around that so it's a new color. And we just didn't want to come all the way down here because that gets too close to this. This blue part here will represent the shell edge that would fit right around the base of the sculpture. I am now going to start getting rid of some extra topology. So like this band here, I don't need it. I'm going to get rid of it. I don't need the band here. I'm going to get rid of it. And I don't need anything around these eyes. So I'm going to get rid of it. And sometimes when you do the alt click with the insert edge loop, it does not clear out correctly. So we can mask. Helps. This one I'm going to have to manually stitch it together. So we go over here to stitch, holding spacebar. We're just going to close this section up. And basically all those little edges and stuff, when we start expanding for our silicone thickness, those will start colliding and it becomes more of a hassle. You're going to see some collision here in a minute. I want all this to be one poly group, but not the base. So I'm going to Control Shift click the base, Control Shift click, drag, and then Control W, and make this all one poly group. That purple is our silicone, but right now the silicone is right up against the sculpture. That's fine, but we don't want that to be represented in the shell. So we're going to expand it. And the good rule of thumb for this type of mold is about 1/4 inch thick silicone. If you go any thicker than that, you will have a harder time getting the silicone off of the sculpture because we want this to be a seamless mold. We don't want it to cut it. So if it gets too thick, it gets really, really hard to peel off. And if it's too thin, then you're going to have collision issues when you put the mold together. So 1/4 inch is been a really good safe zone. That's about 6.5 millimeters. So 6.5 to 7 millimeter thickness is where I like to be. And so we're going to zoom in here, hovering over this with our Z modeler tool. We're going to hold space bar, go to extrude and single poly. We're just going to guesstimate and check our thickness. So hitting W, we get, and then hitting Y, we'll turn on our transpose line tool. We're going to click corner to corner here, and that's 8.5. That's too thick, so I'm going to undo that and try guessing again. Not this 6.5. That's good. Not rocket science. I'm not needing it to be precisely 6.5. I did get pretty close, but one at a time. Now we can undo that. ZBrush has retained that extrusion that we did, and now we're just going to hold space bar and hit polygroup all, and it's going to extrude everything at that thickness. We're going to check some areas that typically have trouble with the extrusion. That's where the topology was really close, right here in the eye. We're going to hold shift, make sure our intensity is low for our smooth, and we're just going to smooth these so that they're not colliding. We don't want to go crazy with the smooth because sometimes the smooth goes out, sometimes the smooth goes in. And if it goes in, it will collide with the sculpture. We will check all of that though. Here under the mouth, some collisions, smoothing those out. Over here, this eye, collision. I could work symmetrically as well. This was a symmetrical sculpture. I typically don't because sometimes my sculptures aren't symmetrical, so I just kind of work around. But if you are working off of symmetrical sculpture, you can X, have your symmetry on, and it'll go even faster. But I'm pretty quick. Lower of the ears usually glide a little bit. All right, we are going to poly loop around this base here. That's that extension that we created. Actually, we just do extrude poly loop. We want that to become a key so that it bites into the shell and holds in place. We're going to add some more keys. Because we did this low topology manually in the last video, this helps us kind of dictate some key placements based on these bands that we created. So holding Alt, we'll just come across here. I like to do a couple in the back, usually one towards the top of the head and one towards the middle. And click those, it'll create, oh, gotta make sure we're not on poly loop anymore. Let's just do single poly for now. And that'll create those keys. Now, sometimes I create molds where the keys go down the middle, down the sides, all the way where the split's gonna be, but that's a different approach on making a matrix mold. Again, if you're interested in seeing that, that uses Z-remesher and polygroups to do that. Let me know in the comments. Enough interest is there, I will revisit another sculpture and show you that process. All right, now we're gonna do some small cleanup. I don't want this edge loop here, so I'm gonna get rid of that. And I'm going to group by normals and crease all of this stuff. Check my creases. I just want to make sure that the corners of the molds keys are sharp because that helps them bite in. This is good. We wanted that to crease because that creates a sharp transition, and we probably want to do a sharp transition on the nose, so we're going to crease that. If I didn't have creases in these areas right here in the nose, the mold, when you subdivide it, will shrink and round out, and that won't work for uh, your mold. And we're also going to do the creasing on the brow here. Keep those sharp. And that looks pretty good so far. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the thickness of what our printed shell would be. Right now, looking at getting rid of this, that's the base that touches the sculpture. That's what I just hid. This is the silicone. And if I reveal the sculpture, put double on the sculpture. So if I reveal the sculpture and just hide a section here, you can see the thickness is working around that sculpture. And it's not touching. But we need this thickness to become a shell. So we're going to build a shell outside of this. That's going to be the 3D printed part. And that, I like to make it about 3.5 millimeters to 4 millimeters thick. Makes a nice strong shell. Anything less than that, it can get kind of flimsy. Drop the mold, it could break really easily. It's 3D printed, so it could break either way, but it makes it more robust. I also don't like to go bigger than 4 because then you get a really thick, longer printed mold. This is not like a heavy pressure casted, weighted piece. You know, when you cast it's urethane rubber, you're putting your hands in there, you're rubbing them around. It doesn't need to be super strong. And it doesn't need to be super heavy duty. We're not injecting anything. We're not putting pressure on this. So 3.5, 4 millimeters. Before I do that though, the base of this right now as it stands is about the same as the original sculpture. And that's going to be a problem later. So before I do any extrusions, I'm going to come to the edge here. I'm going to slide edge complete and I'm going to shrink it just a smidge, because we're going to be doing some projections, and if we are right at the base or a little bit wider, it'll project funny. I'm also going to add another edge loop around there, and that's going to keep this base from shrinking when I do my subdivision, which I'm going to start doing now. I'm actually going to subdivide. Actually, before I subdivide it, I am going to dictate. Let me hide everything. I'm going to dictate the thickness. Remember I said that ZBrush's Z modeler tool will remember your extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and set that at 3.5. Let's see if that's there. It's 2.25, so a little bit bigger than that. 2.5. A bit more. It's 4.2. I don't want to be that big, so I'm going to try 10. That's 3. A little bit more. It's just trial and error. There is no, I mean, I could use the Caliber Master tool, but I'm trying to do this one video where you don't have that. So I got it at 3.6. Perfect. It's set. It will remember that. Now we're ready to start playing with this. Before I do that, I'm going to duplicate it. I don't want to mess this one up. That's pretty much set and ready to go. We'll work off of the duplication. What we need to do is we need more polygons, because the base right now is really not adhering very well to, because it's so low to the base of the sculpture. And if I created all these subdivisions, it's actually going to start shrinking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work one step at a time. I'm going to hit Control D, I'm going to subdivide, and delete the lower. And then I'm going to isolate and project to the original sculpture. I'm just checking right now. I'm making sure that we're not getting a lot of poly loops, because it will start colliding. We might get rid of some of these edge loops by holding Alt, just to keep it from getting really tight. It's going to get tight. It's going to have collisions, but we're trying to limit the amount of work it's going to take for us to fix that. Okay, I'm going to Control D again. I'm going to isolate project, delete the lower. I don't need the lower. We're going to get rid of a few extra bits. We do want to go probably at least one more higher. So cleaning it up as we go. Control D, delete lower, project. Oops, forgot to isolate, then project. This is bounded pretty good, I would say. Get rid of that. Of that. Now we're going to get to the tricky part, and that's going to create the thickness of the shell based off of the thickness we already established before we started all this. So all we have to do is go to our Z modeler tool, hover over one of these, and make sure we're on all polygons. And when we click it, everything's going to get that 3.5 thickness. We're going to solo everything and just kind of look at it. Because we kept everything clean as we went, we were deleting those edges, we don't have a lot of collision. There is only one area of collision that I can see, and that is right here. This area right here did some funny things, so we're going to try to fix that. Pretty much there. You know, before I do that, let's see if there's an option. The one thing I don't like about extruding all polygons is that it dumps all of its poly grouping. I hate that because it would be very helpful. We're going to recreate some of the poly grouping using the poly loops tool here. You go over the line, do poly group, and it will poly loop. And there's a reason why we're going to do this. We're going to use that as a trick to help clean up those edges. Those edges are kind of wonky on some of these parts here. We're going to use deformation to fix them for us. So we got those isolated. Go down to deformation and polish by groups, and we'll use this to clean up those edges. But before I do that, I actually don't want it to do anything on the inside here. So we're going to isolate these so that it's away from it. Now we'll do it. It's rounding off the corners here. I don't want it to do that. So make sure that those are there. It just looks for the differences. So now they'll keep those corners sharp. Really bad here. We're gonna have to do something. It'll just create print issues if we left some of these here, especially if they're colliding with each other. Almost got those areas fixed. Since it's isolated, a little bit more. Looking pretty decent. I might manually move a little bit. We can check it. You can see that it's not colliding with the existing pieces. That's another great thing about having the poly groups, is that you can have parts stay, some parts go, and then you can utilize that as a tool. But everything looks good. We have it all pretty nice. And this sure this nose, this is a very pointed nose, round that a lot. Make sure that it did. See how it got really close? That's not going to affect the silicone or the master sculpture, but it will collide or get close and thin. We're just going to extend that out a little bit manually. This is the part where I talked about, make that symmetrical. This is the part I was talking about, where knowing molding and knowing where issues could arise, that comes from the experience part. And that's where, you know, your trial and error can happen. We're also moving the inside, so we want to make sure we isolate that. Recognizing how to visually see what's happening as well. I mean, there's so many clues and tips. Like if you look here, really hard to see, but right there, cursor really small, right here where the red circle is and around it, that's the inner topology that's inside this. That's this part. So I can see that it is close. We're just making sure that it's not touching. That's good. Good. This is good. This is ready to get split up into its parts, which is pretty much the last step before we add all these holes and stuff. But just to show you, because we're high subdivision, we will hide a section, turn symmetry off. You can see the shell fitting around this sculpture quite nicely. We'll move on to the next step, which is going to be splitting it up. When I split up a mold, I split it up usually 4 parts in the front. So top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and then 3 to 4 parts in the back. And it could be the same, top left, top right, top bottom, top left, top bottom right. It really depends on how many printers you have, how big your printer is. I print my molds on Neptune 4 Max, so I know that if I split this in half and split it in half again, it'll be plenty, and that each piece will be about 20 odd hours to print. So that's kind of how I gauge it. If you got a smaller printer, you're going to have to break it up into smaller pieces. Just apply what you learn on how to split your pieces up in the best way for you. But to get started, we're going to duplicate this tool and we're going to create a cube. Q-cube is over here under I haven't looked for it in a long time. Initialize. And you can see this cube, sphere, grid, cylinder, Q-cube. But I have it over here on my custom UI. Q-cube it, turn my gizmo back on, and get to the center and bring it up here. And we're going to make this box really big, turn transparency on, and this is going to start dictating all the splits. So right now the box as it is, it's got a line down the middle, left and right, and up and down. I'm going to highlight the middle line and kind of start positioning where I want it. I know that I want it to come across the nose, but I want the back to be higher because the back is going, see how it kind of cuts in? So I'm going to go to my Z modeler tool and I'm going to add in a new poly loop. It's going to dictate where that piece stops. Right about there, right when it starts to curve in. Maybe I can go in a little bit lower. Right there. We're trying to prevent undercuts because when we put the mold together, we work putting the mold together from the bottom to the top. And if there's some kind of undercut, you have a higher chance of scratching the surface. So this will become its own half. This will become its own half. This will become its own half. And this will become its own half. I try to keep everything flat, 90-degree angles for printing purposes. So if technically I could, and I could get all fancy, and I have before, and I could have it, come at an angle where it's like something weird like that. But over time, my whole thing, my whole philosophy has been efficient and practical. So that's where I've adjusted my technique. We're going to move the seam line for split here. I want it to split right down the middle of the ears. And you'll notice that it's way over here. That's a problem. So we're going to add another line. Probably right here. That should be good. This one could probably be printed at an angle. And that's probably what I want to stitch that. Turn symmetry on so it's doing it to the other side. Stitch. And we'll show you how this part right here actually could have just moved that, but I'm thinking as I go here. Clean all that. I could have just slid this, but I'm basically trying to create this at an angle so that it's not printing so much on one half than the other half. I still have my flat surface to print off of, which will be this one right here. So this will work for me. So this is probably one of the more confusing parts. You might want to slow it down or rewatch it several times because we're going to start dictating all these halves and we're going to be sharing parts and it gets really wild. This is why it's important to kind of have your own separate subtool because it's going to start generating a bunch. So we're going to start by creating what's going to be our splitter. It's going to split the master shell. Let's actually rename that so we know that that's. We're going to split that up here. So what we're going to do first is duplicate. And we're going to work off of mesh, single poly, turn symmetry off. Okay. So you can see visually that's going to be a half of our sculpture for later on. Isolate this, Control W to make it all one polygroup and delete. I'm going to come back to this and duplicate it again. I'm going to hide this one because I don't want to interfere with anything. Solo transparent, turn solo off, turn transparency on. Now we're going to dictate. Our symmetry's off. I'm going to dictate this, Control Shift click this, Control W, delete hidden. And that becomes this portion. Hide that, go back, duplicate again. We're going to do the bottom. Make sure symmetry's off. Alt click, Q mesh. Control Shift click, Control W, delete hidden. Now we have what's going to become this half. Go back to the original. And now I don't need to duplicate it because I'm on my last side. Notice that I'm only doing one side. This is a symmetrical mold. If this was not a symmetrical mold, I would have to do every side individually. This is a symmetrical mold, so I only have to do half the work. So here we want this. Turn symmetry off. Control Shift click, delete hidden. So now we have all these halves that will break up our mold. And so here's where, like I said, we start getting complicated because we have to create what I call the splitter. It's going to split the mold into its parts, and then we'll have to create all of our shells and with our flange edges. And so what I want to do first is create my splitting edge. It's going to split everything up. So to do that, turn transparency off, come down to this first one. I'm going to basically extrude polygroup all, and I just want to extrude just a smidge, sliver. Zoom out a little bit. Just a sliver. Okay, remember it saves this. I'm going to go to the next one, click it, does it. Next one, click it, does it. Next one, click it, it does it. Now I'm going to hide the shell. I'm going to turn on all of these sides. Find this one we messed up on. We're going to go back and fix it. This one should have only stopped here. So basically I undid that thickness, and I can I'm going to lose that. We're going to leave it. I'm going to hide that top part. Delete hidden. Close the hole. All right, that'll work. You'll see why in a minute. So now I'm going to hide the sculpture here, and we're going to merge visible, merge visibles, and merge visible, and it's going to create this abomination. It's got thicknesses. We're going to duplicate it, and we're going to mirror it. And then we're going to merge down. I'm going to say it's undoable. It's fine. So now we have all of this information. I'm going to copy, delete this, go back to the tool I was working on, go under the shell and paste it, and I'm going to rename this splitter. And now before I do anything else, I want to go back to all these original tools and undo what I did so that it does not have a thickness in it. Go to one, next one. I'm going to have to redo a little bit more. I'm going to actually, I'll show you why we don't need that. Next one, undo. Next one, undo. We want those all back to their original form. And then hide them all. We're back on the splitter. We're going to turn on the shell. We're going to turn solo off, transparency off, and here it is. Okay. I'm going to go down and turn on my bolts and make sure that it's set to subtract. Not the bolts. Subtract. I'm going to go back to the splitter. I'm going to set it to subtract. And I'm going to hit live Boolean. Turn off polyframe, and you'll see it slice everything up and add the holes. Okay. No, a lot. There's more. Before I do any live Boolean operation, I'm going to add another hole. This is going to be the pour spout. So I'm going to duplicate the splitter temporarily, and I'm going to import my pour spout tool that I created. In the description, I will have a link for this tool. You can have it. There's nothing fancy about it other than it sets up the mold for a pipe to be inserted. So let me go grab that. But yes, down in the description, you will find a link for this tool for you to download, use in yours. So here it is. It is a multi-part tool, OBJ file. Turn live Boolean off for a minute. Split down the middle, and then there's a core piece right here. That is what we're going to use to subtract. And if you look at the other two pieces, you'll see there's a lip here. So when you put a 2.5 inch pipe, PVC pipe, it will stop right there. So, and it's in ZBrush, you know, it's zeroed out. You might have to make sure it's zeroed out so it positions correctly, but everything's on 0. So I just bring it up here, bring it over here, and I angle it, rotate it, and start moving it around. You can see that line right there. That's where the lip is. So I don't want to be too far down. And then I go and isolate just the subtraction piece. I set this to subtract, turn on live Boolean. Now there's a hole in addition to the splits and the bolt holes. This thing is geared up and ready to be its different pieces. So I'm going to hit make Boolean mesh, come over here, turn polyframe on. It's a bunch of polygroups. We're going to auto group, and now they're all individual pieces. Copy and delete all, delete all. And I always delete before I paste because it keeps this area clean. And we'll just rename this shell split. Hide everything. Now we have something that's really cool, because now I can turn on the master sculpture and I can isolate these, and now we're getting closer to that finished mold. But each piece is now separate, individualized. And you can start doing some cool stuff. You can isolate and mask, and then you can play with how you would remove it. All kinds of stuff. So the possibilities are really starting to gear up. There's more to add though. It's not ready yet. You know, we've got other steps, but we are getting closer. All right, so now we're ready to start planning out the flanges and how far out it will go from the shell. I usually start with the top, and in this instance, top left. Then I work my way around the front, and then I'll do the back. Now, the interesting part about this is, one, we'll be borrowing from the first flange to do the next two flanges, and everything starts getting shared. So it starts to actually go a little bit quicker as it builds up all the parts. Again, this is probably one of the more confusing parts of this process, because you've got a lot of things that are happening and they are shared with other parts, and we have to make sure that we don't mess one part up. So you just take your time, go slow. If you need to, start on another tool set, sub tool set, so that you don't have, all the other sculptural pieces. I mean, because right now we're sitting at the silicone original, the shell original, the shell split, the final sculpture. I mean, there's a lot of parts starting to formulate, and that can start to create a little bit of confusion, because you've got all these things on your screen that you have to go through. And if you look over on the right on my subtool palette, there's a lot of squares and you won't start to be able to distinguish them until you start modifying them. So keep that in mind. All right, let's start doing this. ZModeler tool and the mouse is really all that we are using for this entire process. And I'm going to go to the insert, and I'm going to just start adding in lines to kind of create that visual wall. Son of a biscuit. Oh, the recording. No, we're just going to keep going. So, all right, so now we're ready to start creating all the flanges and the walls for the flanges. And from there, things might get a little confusing, because we're now starting to get into some of the, I guess, more tedious work, because we are moving and shaping these walls out, and they are shared with other parts. And so we start to have a combination of things that we have to do. We're going to have to duplicate, delete, and flip faces. All this is going to be shown here, but you might consider starting another subtool where it's just your split up shell and your walls that you're going to be creating. Because if you look over here on my subtool palette, you can see I got a lot of squares here. I could start labeling these, and that might help you. Let's label these. We got, just do F for flange, and we'll abbreviate top, and this is the right. So we know that that's the flange top right. What is this one? This is the flange, and this is top back right. I do abbreviations a lot of the time, so the these will come more natural for me, but for you, this could be fresh. This could be a new concept. So pick an acronym or just label it as detailed as you want. This is the flange, and this is going to be the bottom right. And then we have this flange. This is the flange bottom back right. And I think we have more. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that's all of them, because they all get doubled. And I like to start at the top. In this case, the top right. And we'll be using ZModeler for most of this, if not all of it. And then we will be using the mouse. So I'm on Insert, and we're going to start inserting edges here, or loops, edge loops here, and kind of creating that wall shape. Now, one of the things that has evolved over my process, and as I've learned over the years, is, the width of the wall is important to a degree. We don't want these walls. I've made walls excessively wide, and that creates a mold that is a little bit more cumbersome, especially if you're trying to store it somewhere. It also creates a mold that is longer to print, because you've got excessive walls. I've switched my bolts to hex screws, so they have a hex key on the top of the head, and that allows me to use a hex drive bit, which is really narrow, really skinny, and the bolt is also now, the head is smaller, the thickness is still 1/4 inch, but it allows me to get really tight onto the mold, because the tighter the bolt is to the edge of the shell, the tighter the seam is for that silicone. And it also allows me to have thinner walls, which is also helpful. And I couldn't do that with the hex bolts that I used to use, because the hex bolt drill bit is wider than the bolt, and it always ran into problems. You do have to be mindful, and we'll talk about this when we get to the bolts, about where the bolt will end up on the other side when you put the hole through it. But with that in mind, using those hex screws, I'm able to make my walls thinner, which is, in my instance, it's more convenient. And again, because of the type of mold, we don't need these huge flanges. It's not a pressure casted thing. It's not going to be very intense and holding a large amount of volume when you're casting. It's all hand cast, so it's not needing these heavy duty flanges. So we're going to continue adding loops, and we will be adjusting, so, and probably adding more. But here we are, we've added a few. We've kind of distinguished kind of a border around here, and top here where we want it to stop, and probably add one here for ease of flexibility, because I kind of want that to conform around the edge. And we'll switch over to the point and make sure it's on slide, and we'll go over the edge, make sure that's on slide, and basically we're just going to start sliding this in, get closer. And this part is always a little tricky. Probably want to add another insert here, maybe 2, just so we can help slide it. If you don't have enough of these edge loops, you'll end up having awkward conformity, because it has no bends in it. You can see this bends in real nicely. This is really wide, so we're just going to make sure we're on slide, bring that in closer, and we'll just continue. You can see that there's extra loops here. We're just going to hide that in there and focus on this as our primary loop, and bring these down. Come over here. We need another loop to kind of help guide around the other side of the ear. Then we have inside here. Make sure we're on edge. We don't need to do that. All right, so we've got a good start, good thickness, it's wrapping around. One of the things that we want to also consider is the keys that we haven't added yet. Those are going to add some thickness in some areas, so we're going to make sure we account for that. So put a key right here. And I like to do 2 keys per half. So I'm going to add probably one here, and then one down here. But we'll add some thickness because we want to make room for the key. We don't want the key to touch, and we don't want it to come off the edge. So that's going to be the key. And then we'll do 1 key in the front. Do it right there. And the reason why I do 2 usually is because when you keying in something, it keeps it from kind of rotating when there's 2 keys to lock in. So I don't put any keys on the bottom. That's because it's for printing. So that looks good. We got a nice border you can start to visualize, but to really help visualize, we're going to hold Alt and we're going to start clicking away all of this extra bit that we don't need. And then we'll delete it. So that becomes our flange edge. It's a little wide on the bottom. The bottom is tricky because you have to remember we have to get our drill bit down to the bolt, and you don't want to lose that clearance, but at the same time you don't want this huge flange because that's how wide that flange is when you turn it on the other side. So we have to kind of play with it. And we can still adjust at this stage even though we deleted all the other extra walls. And that's definitely better. It's not as huge. Okay, so that wall is ready to get its thickness and all that, but we're not going to do any of that until we finish all the walls. And here's the trick here. The next one I'm going to do is the bottom here. So we're going to look for the front bottom right, which is here. I'm actually going to bring that down to be below the front top. And remember, we deleted that top part, and that's okay because we're actually going to duplicate the front top right, and we are going to highlight and isolate the bottom, delete hidden, and we're going to flip the normals. Oh, I added a morph target. Delete the morph target if you've somehow managed to accidentally do that. Flip it. And now we're going to make sure that the front bottom right is there, and we're going to merge this down. And we are going to add in the 2 extra edge loops that we inserted on the top. Doesn't have to be precise. I'm getting it generally close, but close enough that I can stitch it without having to fight the two being super close together. I'll show you what I mean. So here I am trying to put it right on it. But when I get closer here, because I have to stitch these are easy to spot because they're not right on each other. But on this one, you can see that they're right on top of each other. So when I hit D for dynamic subdivision, oh, they already bonded. It's a rarity. Sometimes they do auto stitch themselves, and I got lucky there. But the point being is that sometimes it's tricky to snap those. This one I'm not gonna snap. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Try to put it right on top of it. Did not auto snap it, so we have to get real close. The reason why I'm not doing the drag it and stitch this is because then this would be way over here, and then I have to move that. This is practical. Okay, we'll bring everything back. And actually, we're going to leave this edge here because we're going to have to play with that. And we're going to add some more inserts. One down at the bottom where the base is. And then a few extras. Do one here. There. Basically creating a grid. Now, one of the interesting things that is important to point out now is this edge here, which is meant to be close to here, is past this point, and that's important for step that comes later on. We don't want it to be past it or inside of it, and we don't want it to be right on it because we're going to do some cutting later, and if it's not far enough down, it won't cut correctly. Actually, I take that back. We're going to actually make it right here. We want it inside the shell. And we'll move all this up so it's inside the shell as well. Because again, there'll be some cutting that happens. And then we're just back to our sliding and adjusting and all that stuff. We are going to add 2 keys. We'll do one probably up here. And then one right around here. So try to make room for those. Then come over here. And it's really just, I mean, it's kind of boring. It's part of the process, but you're just shaping things out so that it is working and is in your best favor for the mold. I remember when I first did my first matrix mold, I had 40 different parts. I mean, it was so confusing. Hopefully that because of my many years of experience doing this, I'm able to explain this in a much more practical manner. Because it was tough. Okay, we're gonna highlight everything we don't want. And it's okay if you delete stuff in here because it's all gonna get removed anyways. But there it is. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to move. We don't need to do the right side at all because it's a symmetrical mold. Everything gets flipped and copied over, which is convenient. But we are going to move to the back, and it doesn't matter if we do the top or the bottom. So we'll do the top. Actually, we're going to do the bottom. No, we'll do the top first. So to do the top, we're going to need to duplicate the first part that we did, the front top right. We're going to bring that all the way above the front top back right. And for this one, see our split line helps us distinguish what we need and what we don't need. And we need everything above that split line. So we pre-highlighted that part, Control Shift click, delete hidden, flip it. Morph target for some reason. And then we can merge it down, make sure it's here. If you don't make sure and you merge down, you'll end up losing something, or you'll have to fight to get it out of there because it's going to be right on top of stuff. So double check yourself. Merge down. We don't need this back half. And now we can start doing the same process. And it's a lot of repetitiveness. Bring that there. Bring that there. Go ahead and just delete that now. Do our stitches. There. We got one here in the middle. Stitch it in. One here at the bottom. And then we can insert two here. We're going to have one key as well on this side, so we'll make sure we make room for it. Probably right here. It seems to be a good spot for it. Come in here. Same thing. We are restricted by the width here, so we can't really bring that in. And the reason why it's wide there is because we want to put a key right here. Another key here. So we can delete the rest. And that takes care of that. Now we are going to do the bottom. And the bottom is going to need to borrow from two places. We're going to borrow from the top here, and we're going to borrow from this back. So we'll go back to the back, duplicate it, bring it above it. We want it above it because we are going to merge down. We want all that. Delete hidden, flip it. That's ready to drop down. So we'll go ahead and just merge it down now. And then we are going to go to, delete this real quick. We're going to go to the front bottom right, which The names got messed up because we did merging earlier. We're going to duplicate that and bring that to the top. And we just want this part. Delete the hidden, flip it, merge it down. Then we can delete not this one, but this one. We need this one because this part is the only part that's not shared with anything, and it fills the void that's right here. Actually, we might have, we actually will need to, we do need to add it to, oh no, it's, I'm sorry. It's hidden here. We, on this piece, front, top, right. It's right here. We need this. So we're going to duplicate that, bring it up to the top. Delete hidden. Delete that morph target that we somehow added. Flip it, merge it down, and now we have that missing piece. So now we have all the shared pieces together, and the only thing we have to do is this purple part. Of course, we have to merge everything. So we're going to insert some lines to match everything, and I'm going to show you another trick for merging. That's there. We have a couple up here. Close as I can for this trick to work. So we have these, none of them merged. Turn double off to make sure everything's facing the same way, and it is. And we're going to go down to geometry, modify topology, and we're going to hit weld points. And if they are really close, they'll auto weld themselves. This one is a little off from it. I'll just manually stitch it, but that's another way to do it. If you're looking for a quick way of welding everything together. Now we just need to make this side close, and we'll make sure we're on our slides. Start. Actually, we don't need this one. We don't need any of this. We will just, before we delete though, we'll slide outwards this way. If you deleted those, you wouldn't be able to slide, and then you'd have to figure out another way, because if you try moving, sometimes moving loses its flatness and have other issues to contend with, but sliding is the best. And we're going to make some room for the keys that we're going to add, one here and one right there, and let's bring this up. Now we can get rid of that. And we're going to make sure that this is inside the shell. Make sure it is like that for all of them. That's inside the shell. That's inside the shell. Top doesn't matter. So now we have all of our flanges dictated on their shape. We are going to start creating the actual thicknesses for them, and it doesn't matter which one you start with. We are going to make sure all the polygroups are the same, and thickness again is the same as the actual shell. 3.5, 4 is a good number. So we're just going to go to our extrude, and it's not saved anymore because we did the slicer earlier. So we're going to go single poly and just manually figure it out first before we try and do it for everything. That's 4. I'm going to leave it. And then we're going to do extrude, polygroup all. And now we have our thickness for that. And then we can control W and we can start carrying it over to every single one so that they're all the same. Okay. Now, one of the things that I like is I like a nice smoothed out flange edge. So dynamic subdivision is going to help us visualize that, but I don't need it to be super high polygon. So I need to be careful on how many subdivisions I give it. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to group by normals, and we're going to crease, and we're going to see what that looks like. And that looks really nice. It's smooth. But it's too rounded. So our crease level, we're going to bump it up just to get sharper corners, but we'll still have that roundness that it's creating. And that I like. You'll see we have an issue here, and that's because it did not crease into the corners. So we will manually add those creases. And that is really, really nice. Nice roundness. This part of the mold is too sharp. When you go and print this and it's in your shop, this corner is a nasty corner. We don't want that. So we're gonna just do a little trickery here, and we're gonna stitch this corner. And this is different every time, every mold. But now that corner is facing up, and we're gonna leave it like it is, but crease this corner. So it's a rounded corner, and that won't be a pain in the butt if you run into it. This one's fine. If you didn't like it, you could take the crease away. I am not going to do that. Then we'll Control W and make it all one polygroup. And then we'll continue to do that for all of our flanges before we do anything else. So the same thing, group by normals, crease polygroups. We're going to test the subdivision by doing dynamic subdivision, move it to 4 for crease level, 4 for smooth, and give those corners their creases. That looks good. Nice and healthy mold. It is a little wide there. But again, I have to remember I got 2 keys that have to go in there. So I have to give room for them. Control W, move on to the back. Same thing, group, crease, crease level 4. 4 for the smooth subdivision, crease corners. Once you start to pick up on the routine, I feel like this is really a simple process. And I think that anybody that does it, I think if you get 2-4 molds under your belt, this will be really straightforward. Crease levels 4. And again, for all of this stuff, we talked about it in the sculpting video, but all that creasing stuff is under geometry, crease. And I'm using on mine crease level, which is right here where the mouse is spinning around. I'm using crease polygroup, which is right here. We're grouping by normals, that's under polygroups. And then there will be a group by normals. The angle is set by default at 45. And then dynamic subdivision is D. But if you want to change your dynamic subdivision levels, you go to dynamic subdivision under geometry, which is right here. And you have control of the smooth subdivision level. In case you didn't remember where that was. Or you didn't watch the sculpting video, which I highly recommend if you're interested in learning how to sculpt your own. Okay, this corner, we're going to tweak that, but we can't really stitch anywhere because that's way up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another loop. We're going to bring it right out front of this because we're going to slide this edge and we don't want to change any of that. Grab our slide. And that is fair. It is a little bit of a corner there. Let's see what it's gonna really round out. So we might not like. I don't like them super round. That's just me. I will actually leave it how it was and leave that rounded. You can highlight it, and if you have the gizmo on, you can move it however you like. And I'm just giving it a little bit more space. Right, I think that all looks good. These are all good. We're going to Control W that and make that one. You'll see that we have, because of that creasing, it's spun this out, and we can match that by creasing this corner, and that will line up with the rest. Same right here, you can see. And this is just part of checking everything. Now that all fits together and matches nicely. There's really no way around that because that's the end of the mold flange half. So we'll get that kind of interesting swooping shape right here. And I might change that. But before I do anything and set everything in stone, we're going to actually mess with the keys and see if we like the width of this, because we can change that now before we settle in. So I'm going to go up to the 2-inch mold piece that we have earlier. I'm going to duplicate it and import my mold keys. Duplicate, import, delete hidden, because there's some hidden stuff here. And my mold key is just a generic disk that I made. There's nothing fancy with this. I just made one using the quick cylinder button. And it's just simple disk. I have these 2 different colors to help me later, and a set thickness, nothing fancy. That all changes. It's not a set size of any specific width, because that changes. Basically, I import this, and technically I could just hit Q cylinder, bump up the subdivisions if you wanted to. Whoops. Q cylinder, crease groups. The problem with this is that the Q cylinder does that funny business with it doesn't close the hole in a correct manner. Delete hidden. There we go. That'll round out better once I correct the poly group. Now when I crease it, I can undo the old creases. All right, now it's round. You could do this. I know that was a little bit. We'll work off of assuming you don't have your own key to input. So we'll do all that. We will edit that back. All right. Is it? All right, let's just assume for a second, because you actually don't need this kind of file. I do that because it's quick. I can drop it in, but you can create your own, and it's super easy to do. I have it up here, but if you go down to, we talked about it earlier, and initialize, and it doesn't matter which one you choose, but you want cylinder. Let's just do this one. It's going to create a cylinder. It's not the best cylinder because the way it does the top and the bottom. So we're going to fix that. Control Shift click this. It gets rid of them. We're going to delete hidden. And then we'll just do close convex hole. And that will create a much better cylinder when it gets subdivided. Then we'll crease polygroups. Get rid of, this one here in the middle. And we will give it a couple of subdivisions and then delete lower. We'll delete this because it does that weirdness there. We just have to give it something simpler, and that's just basically reclosing it. Now we have this nice cylinder here. I don't want any of this extra inserts, so we're going to get rid of those. And now we have pretty much the same thing. It's thicker, if that That's easy though. We go to our W for move, bring the gizmo here, and just grab this red, and we just created basically the same thing. It's got a few more loops here. We can get rid of those two. This is essentially how I made the first one that I imported. I just export it so that I don't have to sit here and do all that every time. You do it once, save it as an OBJ, and then you can just import your own. So we'll work off of with this one though, since that's what we just did. So you face it towards you, go down to brush, which is B, create insert mesh tool, new, and now we have the tool that has the drag rectangle. Make sure that's on. Every now and a blue moon, it might put it on dots. Make sure it's on drag. And you can drag and it'll make it any shape you want. But we're not going to make it any shape we want. We are going to set the shape. So by putting it on top of the surface, and I'm still on this tool, by the way. I'm not on this. This is just visible. But I can grab and drag, and that's great. But I want it to be a set size, and I want them all to be the same. And that's just me. You don't have to do that. I just like consistency within my stuff. So over in the draw size, if you set a draw size, we'll start with 10. I can click and drag and hold control and it will snap it to that size. And that's pretty small. So we'll try 15. Click, drag, snap, and that's a good size. I think that will be good for the mold. Let's just try 20. If it's bigger, it's bigger. That's a little, let's do it. Let's split the difference. Try 18. Really just trying to find a happy medium. That's good. So I'm going to put these where I know I want them. And I want 2 on every half. Maybe right here in the corner. Pretty fair. No, I want a bolt there, so we'll put one right over here. The fronts, I just give 1. The pour spouts here, so I don't want to put anything there. And on the back, see that 18 is a little, we're gonna have to adjust, and that's fine. One right here. One right here. So this is the fun part. We've got them all where we want them. But we've got more space than maybe we need. And not enough right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our flanges. Go over here. And I'm going to merge all of my flanges together because they're all different poly groups. So I'm just going to start merging down. I make sure that the next one's the same, the flange. I don't want to merge something that's not a flange. So I've got all my flanges together, and now I can edit them together with some simple edits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control, and I'm going to mask these parts and hit W, bring my gizmo up, make sure my gizmo is orientated perpendicular. And I can tweak this just ever so slightly. Maybe I want to tweak this. Just to keep it from being too big, too small, everything in between. Right here, we're going to tweak this. We're going to bring that up. Tweak this, control to flip it. Both at the same time. Basically manipulating the mold flanges the way I want them. And keeping everything snapped. We don't want it to be off a little bit, and then you'll start losing your flatness. That's pretty good. I really hate this. I don't like that bulbousness, but what can we do? Not much. That's better. So now we have our flanges figured out. We know where our keys are going to go. We're ready to add the bolts. Now the bolts, I have a specific file for that. I'll include it. I'll include it with the pour spout. It's just, we're going to duplicate this. It's just 1/4 inch rods that I scaled and had created for this purpose. So here it is, long. This is scaled upon import. See the difference. And we talked about this in the sculpting video, but we're going to do it again. Brush, create insert mesh. We're going to do a new one. Make sure it's on drag. And usually with my scale, it is set at 2 different numbers. So I can try 25.5 because it's either 25.5 or I think like 10 or something. Click the center here, control and click. And you can see that that 25.5 is the right size. It matches the input. So now I have this scaled set to add. And we're going to make sure the embed is set to 0, and that's under brush up top. Depth, embed, bring the circle down, or you can play with the slider. We're just going to click control, going to drag, go right through. This one, we have to make sure we have one here because it's shared between 2 different parts. This key needs to be a little higher, so let's fix that real quick. We want bolts to always come towards the corners for maximum efficiency in terms of bolting the mold together. Now we've got that. I'll just come over here on this side. Looks good. Come in. Where I am starting to get a visualization here, and I am going to be making some changes. I like one towards the top, but not the tippity top because there's going to be a bleeder hole here. I always get a little crazy with bolts. You don't need 1,000 bolts, so I'm going to get rid of these real quick. Delete hidden. Delete hidden. I want some closer ones. All right. This one probably. These keys are way too big. Way too big. I'm going to redo all of them, which is good because they really started to bug me in terms of the flange. So we're going to go back and redo the keys. So that mold key is right up top here. And we're going to take it down to 10. I think 10 earlier that we first started with. It's probably good. Maybe not 10. 15. Because earlier that was looking really big compared to these 1/4 inch bolts. And that's going to allow us to really adjust this mold. And it won't be so bulbous. Just there were some parts of it that just was really bugging the crap out of me. And now I'm going to be able to fix all that. So let's do the same adjustments that we did earlier, but now we can bring it in tighter. look at the amount of adjustment that we're getting here. We're really able to narrow this mold, and that is good for me. Make printing it simpler. Quicker, I should say. Especially this. This was huge. Such a difference now. Look at that mold. Not as ginormous. I love it. Very happy with that. Let's continue adding the bolts because we did not finish doing that. We do need to add the bolts on the sides here. Make sure we're on bolt hole. Make sure we're back at 25.5 because that was our magic number. And we're going to add some more. Adding bolts around your keys is good because it'll tighten those keys up. And you still add hot glue around them, which we'll go over in the molding video, but it helps keep it from leaking towards that area. We'll want to do that, but I'm not going to decide because it's pretty close. Got to remember where our pour spout is, which is right there. Beautiful. This looks good. That is the bolt holes now. We are ready for the next step, which is going to be, we're going to subtract the shell from the flange and the bolt holes. We're going to do the keys last because the keys get really, really confusing very quickly, more so than the doing all the flange work that we just did. So let's start by making sure our bolt hole is on subtract there. We're going to turn our mold keys off for right now. And we are going to go to turn the shell split off. We're going to go to the shell. We're going to duplicate the shell. We're going to shift click this down arrow, bring it all the way to the bottom. Let's isolate this. And what we're going to do is we are going to get rid of the outside. Go ahead and delete hidden. We're going to auto group and isolate the outside, the inside. So this is the inside of that shell that we created. And we are going to Z modeler. I like to use the Z modeler versus the close holes because it does a better job. And we are going to close the bottom of this. And when we close it, we want to make sure we're on concave, not convex. It's going to seal this off. And then we're going to make sure we flip it correctly. Delete any morph targets. Flip it, and now we have this. This is going to hollow out all of our flanges. So we are going to make sure that this is on subtraction and it's visible. We're going to go leave our bolt holes visible and our flanges visible and nothing else. Oh, we are going to turn on the two-piece mold. This needs to be below the flanges because we're going to subtract that out as well. And we're going to turn solo off. Live Boolean is already on, and you can see it doing its subtraction work. Oh, we forgot some bolt holes here. We'll have to go add those real quick. But what I wanted to show you before I do all that, let me turn Live Boolean on. The reason why we brought these flanges up high is because if it's going beyond this, it won't cut the bottom off, and then you'll have to redo it all. This is going to stop shy of the actual shell, but that's okay. It doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom, but we don't want it way up here. So that is why I extended all these to be within the actual shell itself for that subtraction that's going to take place. But before we do that, we want to make sure we get the rest of these bolts in, since we did forget them. We go back to our brush, and it's down at the bottom. We can add these. 3 is good. Okay. Those are added now. Now, one other thing that we want to also be aware of in this particular step is the positioning of all the bolts. Make sure that none of them are colliding with anything. This kind of gives you a visualization of where the bolt's going to stick out of when you put it in, and everything looks good. Nothing is running into anything, including other bolts. You can see that these two are close together, but we'll know that one of these, they all have to come in on the same side. Again, it just comes with practice. Okay, that all looks good. Let's turn the live boolean on, and now we've got everything split apart. Lovely. To do this correctly, though, we don't want to live boolean it like this, because then it'll merge it all together. So we have to Control-Shift-Click each. Make sure you're on the flanges, and Control-Shift-Click the ones you're wanting to do. This guy needs to be the same color. Auto group. Oh. Before that, though, no, we're good. Everything, we like everything the way it is. So Control-Shift-Click this. Make sure solo's on. Oh, I'm sorry. I did forget something. Because they're all together, we want to make sure our subdivisions are applied. Because when we Control-Shift-Click to hide, it will go back to the low subdivision, and we don't want that. So now that we have everything the way we want it, Control-Shift-Click it, make Boolean mesh. And now we have it right here. I like to apply a poly grouping, so Control W, it's all the same. And we're going to leave this over here for now, because again, it's going to start building up a lot of parts. Control-Shift-Click. You see right there is why we go short of the actual shell, because it's going to delete, this part's going to be separate. But we're going to do make mesh boolean. Going to create a new part. Going to hit auto group, isolate, delete hidden. This is where it gets crazy. Copy, delete, go back to the first one that we created and paste it. So we're going to put them all here. Control-Shift-Click, go to the next one. Same thing. Make mesh boolean, go find it. Auto group, Control-Shift-Click, delete hidden, copy, delete, hit OK, and paste it. What we're doing is we're moving things around, but we're also getting rid of them so we don't have a bunch of extra tools just sitting in the sub tool palette, because again, that will get really confusing, and then you'll get kind of lost as to where everything was to begin with. Right now, we only have a few tools up here. If we left everything, you would get overwhelmed really quickly. Go back, Control-Shift-Click, go to the next one. Then we'll make mesh boolean. We'll find it. This one we don't have to delete anything, but we do want to Control W, make it all one, copy, delete, hit OK, and paste it. Now it's all here. Every single separated flange. Woo! That's only 1/2. Luckily, we only need 1/2. What we're going to do, it's going to merge all these down. Merge down, down, merge down. They're all separated. We're going to duplicate, and we're going to mirror it. And now we have both halves completely done. Beautiful, right? We're going to leave this over here because, again, this one's got a lot going on. And we're going to go to our split up shell. We're going to copy that. We're going to bring it over here. Paste it. Shift, send it to the top. Now we can play a little bit. Look at what we've created. Let's hide this half. I can actually, we don't need to hide it. We're going to merge this down and it's all together. Now I can Control Shift click this. Auto group. They're all different. Control Shift click this. And then I can go to the shell and Control Shift click this. And now you get a visualization of what that finished shell is going to look like. See this dark and light shade? That is telling you that everything is lining up perfectly, which is what you want. But we're not done. We've got keys to add. We've got the top of the flange to add. We have much, much more to do. But let's do the top here where the two halves of the flange holder, or not the flange, but the pipe holder are. So we go back to the original. We're going to go to the pipe, which is right here, and turn live Boolean off so we can see it. Hit shift and click the eyeball so everything's hidden. We're going to go down to the bottom and click this guy, bring him back. He's important. Come back to the 2-inch mold piece and we're going to click the additive so it's not subtracting anymore. Control Shift click brings the shell walls out, and then we're going to Control Shift click the left. We're going to hit live Boolean and it's going to slice basically, and I'll show you, see how that's getting sliced off. Slice off what needs to be cut. Make mesh Boolean or make Boolean mesh. Come over here, Control W, copy, delete, go to where all of our parts are and paste it. Now, we can just mirror this. So we can duplicate it and we can mirror it, and it's in its spot where it needs to be. And now we're done. We're done with that. Those are all ready to go, ready to be added together. So let's start piecing this all together. We're going to, I like to make everything Control W, its own shared subtool. So we're going to merge this down. So this is one, all the flanges are one, and the shell is all one. It makes it easier. Everything's going to be additive for this live Boolean operation. So these are all clicked and all the eyeballs are on. We'll start with the top and then we can turn this off and do the rest. So we're going to Control Shift click this side, Alt click this, Control Shift click that, Alt click this, Control Shift that, turn off poly grouping, make mesh Boolean. Going to create a new subtool, Control W, and we're going to leave that alone for now. Come back, Control Shift click, Control Shift click this, Alt click that, Control Shift click, Control Shift click. You get the pattern. See, this is why it becomes a routine and why this becomes easier and easier to do as you go. Make mesh Boolean, come over here, Control W, copy, delete, OK, paste it. Keep on going. Control click. Start at the bottom. Alt click. Control Shift click. Control Shift click again, and hide that. We don't need it anymore. Make mesh Boolean. Control W. Copy. Delete. OK. Paste. It's easier. We are doing the same thing continuously, over and over. Let's time lapse this. All right, so they're all created, and now we can check everything, make sure nothing got wonked out. I did see something, but what we're going to do real quick is we're just going to merge everything down. Then we can check the inside of the mold. There's a lot of operations happening, a lot of things to fluke and have problems with, so we just check. You can see right here there is a slight variance in the curvature here. Let's see if it's on the other side. It's not. I'm not sure what happened there. It's quite interesting. Keep looking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to merge. Let's do half the entire mold. Check it out. So yeah, there's a little weirdness there. I'm not sure why that's inconsistent. It's right there too. Turn live Boolean off, but not a big deal. And the reason why it's not a big deal and I'm not worried about it is because it's just a small slight variance. But we know that this side is completely good. This side's a little weird for whatever reason. What we can do is split hidden. We're going to delete the bad side because this is a symmetrical mold. That's fine. We can duplicate and we can actually just mirror it. And now it's exactly the same. If it wasn't a symmetrical mold, trust me, that variance that we saw, it's insignificant. It would not affect or damage or ruin the mold. But just to show you, if it is an issue in your mold and you don't like it or whatever the case may be, you can just mirror this because it's a symmetrical mold. Why that happened, I mean, the variances in all the different pieces come into play. If we look at this, the issue happened somewhere right in this area, and I don't know what could be causing that. You can see it right here where it's not perfectly cut correctly, but it's not a big deal because it's such a minute difference. You know, and the eye here is a little higher, but it should be fine. And we'll check it. We'll go over here back and copy the final sculpt, bring it to this, paste it, and we'll merge. Actually, we won't merge anything yet because we might. Let's take a look. You can see it has no issue with the actual eye. No collisions. Plenty of space. So we'll move on. Merge down so that all those pieces are the same. Keep the final sculpt. This is our new molding file. It's almost done. The only thing left are the keys. And let me be honest with you. You don't need the keys if you are confident in putting the mold together. The reason why we have the keys is that when you put the mold together, the two halves don't slide around and accidentally bump your sculpture. The keys help lock it into place and keeps it from moving around. I could call this a day and walk away and start printing, but I do add mold keys and I'm going to show you that. So we go back to that sculpt file and we go find those mold keys that we established. We have the base mold keys. We're going to copy those. We're going to bring them over here. Paste. This last file here, with all the flanges and stuff, we don't need it anymore, so we're going to delete all. We just have the 2 files. And then we are going to come back and grab the flange mold keys. Here. Copy. Paste. Beautiful. All right. So we have the mold keys from when we printed it. It's right here. And we have the new mold keys. So first thing I want to do is I actually want to go back to the original file, which is right here. We still have it open. And I want to grab the final print file right here. And I want to bring it over here as well with the final sculpture. Final sculpture, actually, I don't need it. I can delete that. I want the one with the holes because I want to make sure everything's lining up correctly. We're going to add so when it comes to keys, the base keys we know are going to be additive. They are added to the flange to fit into the holes of the original printed sculpture. The keys that we're going to add to the flange will be done in 2 parts. There will be the additive keys that will basically stick out of the flange, and then the subtractive keys, which will be the hole so that they fit in. So we're going to duplicate those. So there's 2 sets, and I'm going to rename to mold keys add and mold keys subtract. Mold keys will take some getting used to. You know, this is something that I've started doing with the circle keys. I used to add these trapezoid-like keys, and it just took time, and this is so much quicker and more efficient, and it's easier to print. So it does get a little tricky because we are adding on one side and subtracting on another side. So let's start with the additive. Actually, I want to start with the subtractive first because the subtraction is the biggest part of the key. And then when we add, we're going to actually shrink the key so it fits inside. So we're going to go to the subtracted keys, and we're going to mirror and weld so that we are on both sides. We can get rid of these because we're going to extend them. All right. One of the things we want to make sure before we start doing all the stuff that we need for the mold keys is we need to make sure that these sides are working together. And what I mean by that is, you see how the faces are all kind of different colors? We want everything to happen simultaneously. So what we're going to have to do is start dictating the faces and their colors. So we are going to make the ones sticking out and facing us one color and the ones behind us a separate color. To do that, we're going to come over here, get on the face, go to poly group and flat island. We're just going to click. Let's try a different color so we don't get confused. Holding Alt will change the color. That way we make sure that we're getting new color. And we want them all the same color. All the ones that are facing us. This is extremely important for the steps that are coming up. Okay. Everyone there, and then this side here. If we had symmetry turned on, it would have done this for us. Okay, I'm going to Control Shift click and hide those so that we don't change them again. And then we're going to solo everything, and then we're going to make all these that are facing us now a new color. So we're going to click Alt to change it. We'll just this blue. It's going to go in and change all of these so that they're all their own color. All right, and now we're going to Control Shift click these, and then missed one, undo. That's why we do this. Control Shift click. Now they're all gone. Control W, and all of these loops are one color. We have our separated colors. And I know we did this here, but we're going to actually delete this set of subtools, and we're going to duplicate this because all that work is done. And then we'll rename this subtraction. Okay. So our additive keys, we are going to work off of later. We are going to work on the subtraction ones first, because when we subtract, that's our widest hole. And then when we add, it's actually a smaller peg to fit in the hole. And from here, we want to have these protruding out through everything. And that's why we created all the inner ones one color, and then these outer ones a different color. So we're going to turn on transparency and make sure ghosts is on. This allows us to edit through. And we're going to hover the face and Q mesh, polygroup all, drag until it pops out just a little bit on the other side. Turn transparency off and check it, and just make sure that everything sticks out, and it does. We're going to come back to this one, and with Q mesh polygroup all, we're going to bring these in until, make sure your other subtool is off. That's the added that was on. We're going to click and drag these until it disappears. But we do have this in our way. Always forget about that. Q mesh will add that. We're going to okay, so now we're ready to bring these in and out on the other side. We're going to turn on transparency and make sure ghost is on so we can edit through this. And we're going to Q mesh polygroup all and hold shift after we click it. And that's going to extend this base until it barely comes out on the other side. Turn transparency off and check it. And then we want this side to go in. You want to make sure that your other mold keys are turned off. Otherwise, you'll know when you're going through. So if that off, we can edit this simultaneously, holding shift until it goes in and disappears. We don't want to go too far in, because then it'll go through the other side of the wall. But when you see these kind of translucent lines showing through, that just means that it's inside and it's close. That's what we want. So this is what it should look like. And when we turn off the poly grouping, you can see these lighter circles coming through. That's perfect. That's what we want. So this is going to subtract holes into the flanges. And this is, again, where it kind of starts to get a little complicated, because we don't want holes subtracted through everything. We only want it subtracted through some of the sides. So we're going to make sure our subtraction is on. We're going to hide the bottom base keys. Those are going to be done last. We'll just isolate this first half and turn off poly grouping. And we will do a live Boolean to see what it looks like. And you can see we have, oh, what do we have? We have to auto group. Same. Now we can isolate this one piece. Turn solo off. Okay, now we can see that this piece is subtracting, but it's also creating this base here. So that tells me, this is important to note, that this is not the piece that needs to be subtracted because I can see solidness. So I'm going to reveal everything and come to this piece. Now we have those two holes, but here it's not subtracting. So going to the mold keys, I'm going to Control Shift, drag a rectangle and hold Alt and hide that, because that's going to be an additive. So I can go to my add keys, turn it on. And then I can Control Shift click, drag, get the green circle, because we want that green circle to stay. Oh, this is why it's so confusing. There's so much going on. It drives me nuts. Okay. Turn live is going on. That's why. Okay. All right. We are going to duplicate this one more time and delete this other one because we modified everything. And this is going to be our additive on the bottom. So we're going to add. This is going to be our subtract on the top. Now we want to prepare the add for the next step as well. And the thing about the additive is that an additive needs to be smaller. So we're going to come to this, and these are all the same poly grouping, and we're going to polygroup, we're going to Q mesh this face, polygroup all, holding shift, and we're going to shrink it. We can turn on the other keys to see the difference. When you print, it needs to be a pretty good difference so that any kind of discrepancy with the print, it will still fit without you having to sit there and carve out anything. So this looks like a good distance, but we can play safe. It doesn't have to be a perfect even match because this key will still stop it from sliding around. So those are ready. The additives are ready. The subtractives are ready. We are going to start the process. And this is, again, where it can get a little complicated. But we're going to walk through it, and you can always replay. So on the shell, we're going to do the top piece first. We have all the keys both turned on. We're going to turn live Boolean on, and you're going to see it subtract, and you're going to see it add. So on this first piece, I can't see a hole through it. That means this is where the additive piece goes on all sides. See how there's not a hole on the other side? So we can actually turn the subtraction off, and this is ready to be created. So I'm going to make mesh Boolean. I'm going to go over to that file, I'm going to auto group, Control Shift click it, and delete all the other parts. And we'll leave that here for now. I'm going to Control Shift click, and we're going to go and just move to the next piece. We'll do the back. And in the back, you can see right here, this is going all the way through. So that's subtracting. See the hole now? But here it's not. So we're going to have to hide the subtractive piece. So on the subtractive mold key subtool, Control Shift drag and hold Alt, and it will hide that, and that'll be the additive and the subtractive over here. I do not need to hide the additives. When I hit make mesh Boolean, it'll create a new subtool. I will auto group, Control Shift click it, and it'll get rid of it for me. Delete hidden, copy, delete, and then paste. So there's our first mold paths. You can see the differences there. Well, moving on. We're going to keep going around. Control Shift, bring that back. Go back to the shell. Control Shift, bring that back. And we'll just work around the whole top. Holes through all of it. I don't need to do anything. Make mesh boolean. Auto group. Control Shift click. Everything's hidden. Delete it. Copy, delete, hit OK. Now you can see that piece fits in with that piece. There's nothing there yet. Moving on to the next one. Control Shift click. Come to the back. Control Shift click. There's a hole there. These are additives. So we need to go to the subtraction subtool. Control Shift drag, Alt, hide. We don't want that ring around it. That's fine because that'll go away. Make mesh boolean, go to your boolean file, auto group, Control Shift click, delete hidden, copy, delete, hit OK, and paste. Moving along to the bottom, Control Shift click, bring back what we removed, go to the shell, Control Shift click, and we'll just Control Shift click this one. Holes through everything, make mesh boolean, we're good. Auto group, Control Shift click, delete hidden, copy, delete, OK, bring it to here, paste it. Moving on to the next one. Control Shift click, Control Shift click. And it's repetitive. I don't want to time lapse this because I want to just show you how you have to be alert. We're looking for that hole. Those are the subtractions. It's not going through. That means we have to get rid of the subtractions. So we click on the subtraction mold key, subtool, Control Shift click, drag, Alt, hides them, make mesh boolean. Auto group, Control Shift click, delete hidden, copy, delete, OK, paste it. Control Shift click, bring those hidden objects back, go back to the shell, Control Shift click, Control Shift click the next piece. Subtraction is neither one of these. There's no holes on the other side, so we can turn the subtract or the we can turn the subtract off because this is just additive. And we will make mesh boolean, auto group, Control Shift click, delete hidden, copy, delete, OK, paste it with the others, and then we're on the last. Control Shift click, Control Shift click this. That's subtractive, so let's turn subtractive on. And this is additive. So we'll go to the subtract tool, Control Shift, drag, Alt, make mesh boolean, auto group, Control Shift click, delete hidden, copy, delete, OK, and paste it with the others. Here's how we can check our work. We're going to merge everything down. You can always skip this until next restart, but I don't ever do that because this is kind of a precaution. If you're wondering why I don't do that. All right, if we hit polygroup and we turn the lines off, we can look at it and we should see the opposite color coming through to indicate that it is going to work. Everything looks good. The last step is coming over here and getting the base mold keys. We're going to copy this and we're going to paste it over here. We're going to come to the master print. We're going to copy that. We're going to paste that right here. And then we're going to delete all this. We don't need it anymore. And now we're ready to add these keys and one other set of keys. The last key set that we want to add in addition to these is going to be some registration keys that help keep the mold at the right distance away from the sculpture. do this with all my sculptures, and it's going to get added. We're going back to the main files that we created because we need this subtraction shell. We need the alt key file right here. And I only need to duplicate this, and I only want one of these. I'm going to pick this one, turn live Boolean off. I'm going to delete hidden, and then I'm going to turn my gizmo on. I'm going to center on it, hold shift and rotate it 90 degrees. And for this, I need to see the sculpture. I'm going to bring this around to the mouth area. This area is insignificant for the casting. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to turn the shell on. Turn my lines back on. Get rid of this. Insert Alt. Control Shift click this. And I want to project that. So it goes straight to that. Mask that one. That's why I got rid of this line, because that would have interfered. So that's perfectly flush. I'm going to mirror and weld it to the other side. I'm going to turn off the shell. Check this. Good. Turn off the final sculpt. Good. Unmask everything. I'm going to come down to the shell subtractor. Actually, no, I don't want to subtract. Come up and bring this all the way to the very top. I'm going to turn the final sculpt to a subtractor. Turn that on. Turn the bolts on. And then I'm going to live Boolean that so that it subtracts that away. We're going to Control W, make those all one. Copy, delete, OK. Bring it to my final mold. And the purpose of this, and I'll show it to you. Turn this off and come to here. This piece protrudes the right thickness, which is that 1/4 inch, and it will contact with the master sculpt, and it keeps the mold from sliding back. And it'll be these little holes in the silicone, and it won't affect the casting at all. So we want to make sure that those are getting added to the base, in addition to these keys. And we want to make sure that these keys are sticking out on the inside, but not this far, and they don't protrude out. So to do that, we are going to check these are all sticking out just enough, which is good because that's pure contact along this surface. This one was just too far out, so we'll auto group or group by normals. We want these all to be different, but we'll turn symmetry on so that they are getting adjusted at the same time. Turn the shell back on, and then we'll come over here and we'll just hue mesh that island. Click, hold shift. These all disappear, and then here it's the same thing, except we'll have to do each one. Can click, Control Shift, bring it back. It's okay if it sticks out a little. We just don't want it to stick out that. And just like we did before with the outside keys, we need to shrink these. We can do that by Control-Shift clicking away these faces. We have these all. Sure, nobody hidden. Turn double on. Control W. Now those are all the same. And then we will grab a face, click and shift. Oh, it's on Flat Island. Let's make sure it's on Polygroup All. Shrink that. So we can turn the print off. And then we can go and add these around the base of this cell. So Control-Shift click this. I want to make sure all these little greebly things are on, and make mesh boolean. Auto group, Control-Shift click, delete hidden. Move on to the next piece. Make mesh. Auto group, Control-Shift click, delete hidden. Copy, delete, okay. Add it to this guy. On around the world. Make mesh boolean. Auto group. Delete hidden. Copy. Okay. Paste. Control-Shift click. Again. Make mesh boolean. Auto group. Delete hidden. Oops, excuse me. Control-Shift click. Delete hidden. Copy. Delete. Okay. Paste. Merge all these down. Copy this. Delete. Okay. Come over here. Paste it. Come to this, and we're going to this is the top one that has everything. Let's just going to Control click and get rid of all the bottoms. Delete hidden. Merge down. And that is a complete finished matrix mold. We can delete this extra bits here we don't need. Leave the print. And you have final finish mold that complete contact around the base, sits through with its keys, 100% ready to be printed and poured. It's a lot. It's a lot of steps and a lot of forethought. You have to really think about it. You know, how thick the silicone's going to be, how thick you want the edges of the flanges to be. I mean, there's just so many things, and there's so much information in this video. I hope you find it extremely helpful. I hope it's a good starting point for you to create your own mold. And like I said before, there's another way to do this. But we get to a point where towards the end, when we're doing all the flanges, that all is the same. And if you're not sure of what I did at a certain step, go back and watch it. Ask a question down in the comments below. I'll be happy to address any of the questions so that you have a better understanding for your success. But it is it's a long time coming. I know a lot of people have asked about this. This video is pretty much straight through, uninterrupted, of the entire process. And I hope that you found something beneficial for you in the future of your sculptures. And if you haven't already, please take the time, hit the like button, and subscribe. It'll help me out. It'll motivate me more to do more videos, to share more process, and educate you more on this side of things. But until then, we have more to do with this series. We're gonna put this mold together, and we're gonna pour the silicone. I'm gonna show you how I do all of that, and take this all the way to the end. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Have fun making your stuff. See ya.